All right, let's take a look at mortgages. So, some of the things we're going to be looking at specifically are conventional mortgages and adjustable rate mortgages. Okay, if we were in class, I would have us stop and think, what are the financial obligations that must be met prior to obtaining a home loan? What are the obligations that must be met after you obtain the home loan? So these are things like, okay, I have to have a certain credit score maybe to get the loan that I want. Or maybe I have to have a certain amount to bring for my down payment. There's a lot of paperwork and specific things that they look for in order to get a home loan. And sometimes when they see something that alerts them, they won't offer you a home loan. Things like your debt to income ratio. When my husband and I were looking at buying our first house, they saw that I had a whole bunch of debt and no income because I was still a student, and his income was not enough to cover his debt and my debt and a house. So, unfortunately, when we bought our first house, it was only in his name because I had zero income and lots of debt. So, things like that, where you don't realize it until you're going through it, might affect your chances of even getting a loan. But we'll look at some things that we can calculate specifically today. We're going to start with some vocab like we always do. That way we know what we're talking about. So the down payment is the amount of money you bring before the lending institution will even give you a mortgage. So how much are you going to pay up front? It's generally a good idea to bring 20%. If you don't have 20%, they have other loan options for you, especially first-time home buyers have some incentives to get that first loan. But like I've said in previous sections, the more you bring as your down payment, the lower the cost of your loan will be. The final step in purchasing a home is called the closing. So at closing, that's where they transfer the home to you, the buyer. You open your mortgage and you start paying the lender of the loan, the mortgage, for the home. So you start paying it off. A homeowner's mortgage is the loan. It's a long-term loan. The property is pledged as security, and the difference between the sale price and the down payment is what you are paying. Whenever you hear of someone, the bank took the house, there's sometimes they lost the house, whatever it is, it might be because they were not paying the loan, and then they decide, okay, if you're not going to pay it, we're going to take it. So whoever offered the loan is using that house as the collateral. So there's two loans we're talking about. The most popular types of mortgages are conventional and adjustable rate, or also known as variable rate. In a conventional loan, your interest rate is fixed the whole loan. In the variable rate loan, the interest may change, so it may go up, may go down. Usually it depends on how the economy is going, the interest rates. You hear home rates are high or home rates are low. That's the variable rate loans that might change with those. And if you hear something called points, which we are going to be using in some of our examples, points are interest prepaid by the buyer. So if you want your interest rate to be reduced, you would pay more points. So you would pay the interest up front. 1 point is equivalent to 1% of your loan. Okay, so let's look at some examples. The Martins, which wish to purchase a house selling for $249,000. They plan to obtain a loan from their bank. The bank requires a 15% down payment payable to the seller and a payment of 2 points payable to the bank. Determine their down payment. Okay, so it tells us that they require a 15% down payment. 15% of what? 15% of the selling price. So we take 15% of 249,000. As an equation, we have 0.15 of always means multiply 249,000. So we get $37,350. Okay, so if they want to enter into this mortgage, they need to bring $37,350 as their down payment. Okay, so then what would the amount of their mortgage be? If they make this down payment, what will the loan be? Well, they started with $249,000 as the price of the house, but they made a down payment, so that does not go into the loan. They paid that already. $37,350. Okay, so if after we take the down payment out, they're left with $211,650. So their mortgage will be $211,650. That's what they still owe on the house. Okay, what would the cost of the 2 points be? So they want to pay those 2 points. It's required to get this mortgage. What would that cost them? Well, we have each point equals 1%, right? Each point equals 1% of the loan. So we would say, okay, 2 points would be 2%. So we have 0.02. And 2% of the loan, we said, okay, that's $211,650. So we multiply that. That gives us $4,233. That's the amount they have to pay to the bank at the time they close on this mortgage. So not only do they need to bring that down payment, but they also need to bring the points. The point money, I guess. Okay, let's talk about your income here, because that's a vital point of getting your mortgage. Lenders typically use a formula to determine the maximum monthly payment that they think you would be able to pay before they decide if you would qualify for this house or not. It's based on your monthly income and your monthly debts. So the monthly income before any deductions is called our gross monthly income. And from the gross, they subtract any debts with more than 10 payments left. That's called the adjusted. So the adjusted monthly takes out your debts. Generally, a loan officer will multiply times 28%. That's what they determine is your maximum monthly house payment. So they'll run a check and they'll see, okay, based on what you currently make and your current debts, you either do or don't qualify for this house based on what you can pay each month. No one will give you a loan if you can't afford the monthly payments, because they're trusting you to make payments, right? That's how they're going to make their money. You're trusting that you can make payments because you need somewhere to live. Okay, let's look at another example. So qualifying this time. Suppose the Martins' gross monthly income is $7,250 and they have 23 monthly payments left of $255 on their car loan, 17 monthly payments of $175 on the braces for their daughter, 11 payments of $45 on furniture loan, and the property taxes and HOA is, or not HOA, homeowners insurance, they want to buy is $165 and $115 per month. So all of these expenses are going into this equation. The bank will approve a loan that has a total monthly mortgage payment of principal, interest, property tax, and homeowners insurance less than or equal to 28% of the monthly income. So first, determine 28% of the adjusted monthly income. Okay, we are going to find that adjusted income by taking their income and subtracting off all of their monthly payments. So, tells us the income $72.50. Okay. Then we have $225 each month, so we'll subtract that. We have $175 every month. We'll subtract that. We have $45 every month, so we'll subtract that. These are money that's already accounted for. Okay? And after we subtract all those things, we're left with $6,805. Okay? That's the adjusted. Now we need to take 28% because that is the key number that they're going to base if the Martins will be able to afford this house or not. So 28% of this adjusted, 0.28 of always means multiply, 6,805. That gives us a monthly $1,905.40. That's 28%. So that's the golden ticket. That's what they can afford. Okay, so then we take that and we say the Martins want a 30-year mortgage, $211,650. If the rate is 4%, let's determine the total monthly house payment. That's the principal, the interest, the taxes, and the insurance. Okay, so to determine that total monthly house payment, we first need to find the monthly principal and interest. Okay, we're going to start with that loan. Where did it go? Here it is. $211,000. That's the whole loan. And because we want to know their monthly on it, I'm going to take this $211,650 and I'm going to see how many thousands is that. Okay, how many thousands? It's 211 thousands, 0.65. That's the number of thousands of dollars that the mortgage is. So using this number, we take so now we're going to take this number and refer to a table here. This is the monthly principal and interest payment per thousands. A lot similar to the table we used in the loans that we had, the fixed rate loans. We have this table for mortgages. Instead of in hundreds of dollars, it's in thousands because mortgages are most commonly in thousands. We're thinking of houses now. Okay, so we're looking at $211.65. What are we going to be multiplying it by? Well, what's our information? 30 years, 4%. Let's use our table. 4% for 30 years, and you guessed it, it's the blue circled number. So we have 4.77415. This is, again, per thousand. So in our example, we have 211 thousands. for every $1,000, we pay 4.77415, just like we calculated in the previous section. Okay, so this gives us $1,010.45. This is our interest, the principal and interest payment. From here, we have to include, we have our principal, we have our interest, we need property tax and insurance. So from here, we add what they told us was the property taxes, 165. What they told us was the insurance, 115, giving us a grand total of $1,290.45. So the monthly mortgage payment is going to be that $1,290. So it's not just principal, and interest, but with a house, now we have to also include property taxes and insurance as well. Okay, so let's determine if they qualify for this mortgage at all based on this information that we've gathered. So 28% of the adjusted monthly we found that to be $1,905.40, right? That's the number we can't go over for these this family. The mortgage payments, monthly payment, we calculated to be $1,290.45. So based on this information, since the monthly payment is lower than that 28%, then yes, they would most likely qualify. So awesome for the Martins. Now, here is our formula that we can use from here on out to calculate the principal and interest payments. M being our principal and interest all together. P is the amount of the mortgage, the whole loan. R is our rate, is a decimal. N is the number of mortgage payments in 1 year, and T will be the time in years. So let's use this formula. We always practice using our formulas that we get. We will use this formula to calculate their monthly principal and interest payment. Remember, we have a 30-year mortgage, 4%, $211,650. Okay, let's start with writing our formula. We have M equal P times R over N all over 1 minus 1 plus R over N raised to negative N times T. Okay, now we plug in what we know. So the mortgage is $211,650. Our rate, 0.04. How many payments are they making each year? 12. It's monthly. 1 minus 1 plus, same thing, 0.04 over 12, raised to a negative 12 times how many years? 30. Okay? As I always say, please be careful putting this formula in your calculator. I always put my parentheses around the numerator, around the denominator, around my exponent, around my fractions. I get really heavy-handed with parentheses. As long as you have two parentheses, right? You don't want to open a parentheses and then not close it. This should give us approximately $1,010.45. Okay, the same amount that we had already calculated earlier. Okay. Determine the total amount, including the principal, interest, down payment, and points that the Martins will pay for their house over the whole 30 years. Okay, so we will look at every money that comes out of their pockets for this whole loan. So, first of all, we have 30 years, and each year they make 12 payments, right? 12 monthly payments. So total, that's 360 monthly payments over the life of the loan. Next, we take those months and multiply it by how much they're paying every month. So they made 360 payments of $1,010.45. Every month they made this payment, and they did it 360 times. So now we have $363,762. That's the total principal and interest. Okay, what else do we need to put? We have our principal, we have our interest, down payment. How much did they bring for their down payment? They brought $37,350. Remember, to start this whole mortgage off, they had to make a down payment. So we add that. So now they okay, and what else? We need to calculate the points. The points cost, if we look back at the example 1, I think, the points cost us $4,233, and they had to pay that to the bank to close on the house. So total, we're at $405,345. So that is our total cost of the house. So this house that was selling for $249,000, they paid on the whole life of the loan with closing and down payment $405,345. Okay. So how much of the cost is interest? How much of this $405,000? Well, remember, we are going to take that $405,000, how much they paid, and we'll subtract off what? The purchase price, $249,000. So So what's that difference? Everything in addition, the extra cost on top of the original price. Okay. So we have 156,345 total interest. That includes the 2 points that they paid ahead of time. Okay, how much of the first mortgage payment goes towards the principal? So you may have remembered, I'll say it again if you don't remember, when they set up your monthly payments, your earlier payments at the beginning of the loan, most of the money goes towards paying interest and a little bit goes towards the principal. And the longer you keep paying it, when you get towards the end of the loan, most of it goes towards the principal and a little bit goes towards the interest. That way they get you to pay your interest off first. So how much of your very first mortgage payment, or the Martins, I saying we and your, but really it's the Martins. So how much of their first payment goes towards principal and how much goes towards interest? So first let's find out the interest part. We are going all the way back to PRT. Okay, so the principal in this case is that $211,650. Why is that it? Because they took the mortgage for $211. Okay, they made that 15% down payment. The down payment is not included in the loan. You already paid that. Next, we have our rate, 4%, 0.04. And our time, well, it's just the first month. So 1 month out of 12. Now, why did we go back to putting time in years? That's because our rate is in years and our time has to match our rate. So it's the annual rate, our time is in years. If it was a monthly rate, our time would be in months. So that's why we switched back to a time in years. What does this multiplication give us? About 705.50 cents. Okay, so this is telling us out of that first payment, the first payment being $1,010, 705 of it is going towards interest. So here's our payment that they make the first month. This much goes towards interest, $705.50. So how much is left? $304.95. That goes to bringing the principal down. And when you're paying $304 towards $211, it's going to go down pretty slowly at first because most of that payment goes towards the interest. Okay, so this is called an amortization schedule. And what it does is it breaks down all the payments of the whole loan. So you can see you have your rate, you have the amount of the loan, and how many payments, 360 over the life of the loan, what the monthly payment is, and the term, a 30-year term, okay? Each payment is broken down in this schedule to show the buyer, you, how much goes towards the interest for each payment, how much goes towards the principal, and then what the new balance of the loan is, all the way down to the very last one where you are paying it off. As you can see, that first few payments, 1, 2, 3, 4, big chunks of your payment are going to the interest, little chunks are going towards the principal. But as you get down to the 200th and 300th payment, more and more are paying off that principal until you've paid off the whole thing. Now, an adjustable rate mortgage, or that variable rate that we talked about earlier, is going to work a little bit differently because the interest rate is not fixed for the length of the loan. So the adjustable rate it will have a fixed period initially called the initial rate period. After that period passes, it could go up or down based on the interest rate market. In the US, interest rates are often tied to the 1-year treasury bills. So depending on those will determine if it moves at all, okay? If it moves up, if it moves down, if it stays the same. As the treasury bills base the adjustable rate mortgages, that rate on the treasury bill is called the base rate. The lender will then add percentages called the add-on rate or the margin. So, for example, it would look something like this. The current 1-year treasury bill rate is 0.22%. The add-on rate from the lender is 3%. The adjustable rate would be the sum of those two things. So it would be 3.22%. That's where those rates come from. Okay, so let's use that information in our next example. The Gislins, I don't know if I'm saying that right, purchased a condo for $275,000 with a down payment of $115,000. They obtained a 15-year mortgage rate, an adjustable rate mortgage with these terms. The interest rate is based on the 1-year treasury bill rate, which currently is 0.5%, and the add-on rate, which is 3%. The initial rate period, so remember that's the time where the rate will not change, the initial rate period. Theirs is 5 years. After that, the initial rate is adjusted once per year, and a new monthly mortgage payment is calculated. So their rate will be adjusted every year after that period until they've finished the loan. Let's start with determining the initial rate. So the initial adjustable rate. It looks like the sum of the treasury bill rate and the add-on rate is going to give us 0.5 plus 3.0, which, be careful on this one, 3.5%. That's it. That's the initial rate. Okay, let's determine the initial monthly payment for principal and interest. So we'll find their monthly payment and then we will split it and see how much of that payment is going towards the principal and how much of that payment is going towards the interest. So we're gonna probably need to refer back to our mortgage table. We're gonna start with they purchased for $275,000, but they made a down payment. So that part's not in the loan. We need to take that $275,000 and subtract off their down payment. What are we left with? $160,000 as the amount of their loan. So how many thousands is this? Because remember, our table is based on thousands. So this is 160. We'll go back to our table. Okay, don't get dizzy. Here it is. We're looking at our rate was 3.5. Let me change. Oh, that does not show up well. For 15 years. And so our value 7.14883. That's what we're going to take with us. Here we go. So we have 160 as the number of thousands. For each thousand, they're getting charged 7.14883, giving us 1,143 and 81 cents. So the initial monthly payment of principal and interest, right, is gonna be $1,143.81. Initial monthly payment of principal and interest. Thanks to our table. Okay, lastly, if after the 5-year initial rate period, the rate of a 1-year treasury bill rises 1.5%, what would their new rate be? Well, if it rose 1.5, remember the initial rate $3, and it rose, the treasury bill one becomes 1.5. So instead of 0.5, now it's 1.5. So we have 3% plus 1.5%. That gives us a new rate of 4.5%. Now you might be thinking, wow, so it could just raise by a lot. Like, what happens if the treasury rate goes up by a lot? Well, they have caps in place. So to prevent a rapid increase or even a rapid decrease, they have these interest rate caps. Some banks have different rate caps. So here's all the caps. A rate cap basically limits the amount that the interest rate can change. A periodic rate cap limits the amount that the rate can increase in one period. So that would be like your mortgage can go up only 1% per year. So it maxes out at 1% per year. So that way you're safe from jumping over 1% in the time span of 1 year. An aggregate rate cap limits the interest rate increase and decrease over the entire life of the loan. So let's say the initial interest rate is 6%, and then they say the aggregate rate cap's 2%, then your rate can only go up to 8% maximum over the life of the loan, and it can only go down to 4% over the life of the loan. So it kind of keeps you safe not only in the short term of 1 year at a time, but over the whole life of the loan. So you won't end up spending thousands and thousands and thousands extra if it were to go higher and higher and higher every single year. So these caps are put in place to protect you from overspending, overpaying on the same amount of like the same house. Okay, the homework. Please make sure that you are doing your research. All of these things are in the gradebook separately, so you can submit them as you complete them. Make sure you try out Powtoon. It can be the free account, doesn't have to be anything super fancy. I just want you to try it. Do your homework, all in MyLab, and make sure you are accessing the study plan to work on practice problems because that test is going to come up quick.